Salam, shalom, and peace be unto you. Welcome back to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic channel. Today we're going to look at Joshua chapter 22. There are 34 verses in this chapter. We're going to begin this chapter with a big difference. In verse 2, it says here, he heard. You have hearkened to my voice and all that he commanded you. Versus obeyed. Now I know that in Hebrew, the Hebraic thinking, hearkened or hearkened is doesn't just mean listen. It actually means to listen and obey, according to the Hebrew logic. So I will give you that. I'll give people that. Whoever wants to use that logic, it's fine. However, those who don't understand the Hebrew way of thinking, Hebrew culture, they will simply understand this to mean listen versus obeyed. So that could be a big difference depending on whether you're privy to Hebrew culture. Okay, you know what? Actually, I skipped over. That wasn't the verse I was supposed to look at, or the part of the verse. It's the beginning of the verse. It says, you have heard versus you have kept. So heard is not the same as hearkened, although you can use the argument once again to say heard can mean listen and obey. For example, in the Shema, Hear, O Israel, means to listen and obey, as some people would interpret. And then we have what I mentioned earlier, the second part of the verse. And then we have here, he commanded you, talking about Moses, or perhaps Yah. However, in the Masoretic, it's talking about Joshua, that I commanded you, not referring to Moses or Yah. Verse 3, deserted versus left. Until this day you have kept the commandment of Yah your Elohim, versus you have not left your brethren these many days unto this day. But have kept the charge of the commandment of Yah your Elohim. So what's the difference? In the Septuagint, it's saying you have obeyed until this day, versus in the Masoretic, you have not deserted your brethren even until today, or perhaps otherwise interpreted as, or you have deserted your brethren beginning today, starting on this day. Verse 4, Yah told them, versus he promised them. It's one thing to promise, it's another thing to simply tell. However, we know when Yah gives his word, when he says something, it's as good as done. So it depends on who's saying it. And in this case, it is the Creator, Elohim. In verse 5, commandments, commands versus commandment. So it's actually commands. Let me just fix that typo. It says here, with all your mind versus all your heart, and that's a similar difference as we saw in the Shema. Significant difference in verse 8. It says here, it's the narrative. So they departed with much wealth to their houses. They divided the spoil of their enemies with their brethren, very much cattle and silver and gold and iron and much raiment. So that's part of the narrative. However, in the Masoretic, this is a verbal statement. It says, he spake to them, saying, return with much riches unto your tents, with very much cattle. So these are instructions. Cattle with silver, with gold, with the brass, with iron, as you can see. So this seems to be Joshua, Yeshua, son of Nun, saying these things in the Masoretic. So the difference is Joshua blessed them in the Septuagint, and it came to pass, as a matter of fact. Whereas in the Masoretic, Joshua gives them well wishes, but it does not come to pass. Just by him saying it, I should say. Verse 9, departed versus returned and departed. So that seems to be a contradiction depending on how you understand it. They inherited versus they possessed, or they were possessed. Some people can take that to mean they were possessed by a demon. I know that's kind of a stretch, but I have to explain these things very simply and just go through the text as if the person reading them will come up with very strange interpretations or all sorts of interpretations. Verse 10, Gilead versus the borders. We can see that the Septuagint as well follows the narrative from the previous verse. Okay, continuous difference of Gilead versus the borders. In the next verse, we have a significant difference. In verse, I believe this is it's the same verse, verse 10. It's talking about on the opposite side to the children of Israel. Okay, it's actually verse 11. Verses at the passage of the children of Israel. So one is saying it's referring to where this is located in reference to the children of Israel versus the passage of the children of Israel. Sounds like a specific place that they own. In addition, in verse 12, and when the children of Israel heard of it, so that's redundant. It's a redundancy I noticed. Both say into the land of Gilead in verse 13, so the Masoretic contradicts itself. Verse 14, chief versus prince. So chief of every household out of all the tribes of Israel. We can see that it's talking about the heads. The heads of families are the captains of thousands in Israel. Versus each one was a head of the house of their fathers among the thousands of Israel. So each chief is captain over thousands of people. In the Septuagint verses, they are simply heads chosen out of thousands of candidates. So the focus is on responsibility in the Septuagint versus the focus is on the exclusivity and perhaps the glamour of the position of authority. Okay, I'm going to mention verse 16. It says here, you should be apostates versus you might rebel. So the difference is apostates can mean rebels, should say rebels, forsakers, abandoners. And this is saying from Yah, apostates from him versus against him. So it's a lot more, seems to be more condemning in the Masoretic. Verse 17, significant difference here. It says, for you. Too little for you versus for us. So you are at fault versus we are all at fault. Verse 18, there shall be wrath upon all Israel versus he will be wroth with. So there will be consequences versus he, the Creator, will be emotionally displeased. Big difference in verse 19. The land be too little. It's probably really the first big difference in this chapter. The land be too little versus unclean. Okay, do not become apostates from Elohim, neither do you apostatize from Yah, versus rebel not against Yah, nor rebel against us. So the Septuagint is saying do not become or act as an apostate. The Masoretic is saying do not rebel not only against Yah, but also us, or perhaps us and or us. Because of your having built an altar apart from the altar of the Lord our God. versus in building you an altar beside the altar of Yah, our Elohim. So apart certainly means separate from, versus building an altar simply beside the altar. So next to. It can be taken that way. However, I do interpret it as beside, as in apart, but it can be misinterpreted that way. There's an omission of lo, which is an exclamation, way of expressing exclamation. Sorry, let me remind. Lo is an expression of exclamation. Look! Exclamation mark. Again, these punctuation marks are not in the original text. They were inserted by the interpreters. However, look can certainly be expressed loudly. We have a huge difference here as well. In verse 20, he himself died alone in his sin, versus that man perished not alone in his iniquity. So if you look at Joshua 7:25, which we covered, Achan was alone and was stoned to death. It was not his family and associates. He alone was accountable for his own actions. So the Septuagint is correct and the Masoretic is incorrect. It continues to stick to this narrative that not only was Achan killed, but his family and all his associates, his animals, for one person's actions. And it sticks with this narrative because it says here in verse 20, that man perished not alone. So he did not die alone. He died, and the rest of the people were associated with him. Verse 22, if we have transgressed before the Lord by apostasy, let him not deliver us this day. Versus if it be in rebellion, or if in transgression against Yah, save us not this day. So basically it's saying in the Septuagint, if we sinned in this specific way, then let not Yah save us. Versus if we rebelled or we sinned, that's a parenthetical statement, Yah or you, our brethren, do not save us. Okay. 23, an omission of if relating to we have built to ourselves an altar. Verse 24, but we have done this for the sake of precaution, versus and if we have not rather done it for fear of this thing. So they give the rationale for building the altar, that it is done not out of rebellion, but to continue their customs regarding their faith in Yah. It seems to be what is happening in the Septuagint, that they are explaining the rationale. But we have done versus and if. So they're saying in the Masoretic, well, we may have done it for this reason, or we may have not done it for that reason. In verse 25, we have a huge difference here. It's talking about, this is the children of Gad, Reuben and Manasseh, continuing to speak, versus the rest of Israel in the Masoretic is responding to Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh. You, children of Reuben and children of Gad. So we, the children of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh, are divided by geography, by Jordan in the Septuagint, versus the Masoretic saying, we, the children of Israel, say this, you children of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh have no part in Yah, and you will cause our children to rebel, just like you did. Verse 29, far be it from us, versus God forbid, different expressions to express similar feelings, sentiments. Verse 31, this is the first actual verbal response from the rest of Israel in this verse. It says, today we know that Yah is with us, because we have not trespassed grievously against Yah, versus this day we perceive that Yah is among us, because you have not committed this trespass against Yah. So there are two reasons why Phinehas said this, because they have not trespassed, and because they have saved Israel. So those are the two reasons he gives as to why Yah saved them. Because they did not trespass in this matter of their altar that they built, and because they also saved Israel by clearing this up, setting the record straight. So it's two actions there, or two reasons, versus only one reason is given in the Masoretic. You have delivered them, or I should say because you have not committed this trespass, now you have delivered. So they're connecting the trespass with the deliverance. So it's not two actions, it's simply you have not committed this trespass. Now you have delivered the children of Israel. So it seems to be lumped into one big action. Verse 32, the half-tribe of Manasseh is omitted. Verse 33, they spoke to the children of Israel and blessed the God of the children of Israel, and told them to go up no more to war against the others, to destroy the land of the children of Reuben. Verses, the children of Israel blessed Elohim, and did not intend to go up against them in battle to destroy the land. So the difference here is Phinehas and the princes spoke to the children of Israel, and they blessed Elohim. Versus the children of Israel are the ones blessing Elohim, and made the decision, apart from anyone's instructions, to not destroy the land of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. Verse 34, Joshua gave the name to the altar. We're not told what the name is. He simply calls it is a testimony. He describes what it is. Perhaps that's the name. It is a testimony. Could be the name. However, in the Masoretic, they name it Ed. Or perhaps that's the editor, trying to fit in the editor's note. I'm not sure. But we see here ED. And it says here, Yah is their Elohim, versus Yah is Elohim. It's one thing for Yah to simply be Elohim and admit it, but it's another thing altogether to take ownership and declare there is a relationship between this Elohim and the people of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. So that's all for this video. Thank you very much for your time. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel if you have not already. If you have, thank you so much for your support. Till next time, we're going to look at Joshua 23. And until next time, salam, shalom, shalom, and maranatha. Peace be unto you.